So it had this cool weapon on it. And then I had this cool race car. And I was like, well, this race car needed something cool, so I'm thinking, why not put the big weapon on the back of the race car? Because the chances are it's going to be in front of everybody, and then it'll just shoot to the rear, and it'll just be a cool little piece.
Yeah.
So what I need to do though is I got this tube sticking out, and they obviously this is just a big flat piece of metal. So what I want to do is I'll take my jeweler's saw and I'll cut this down, cut that off, so that way this tube is a little bit more free, and maybe I can bend it down. So what I'll do is this is the tube. I'll cut this, cut that, clean it all up, and then try to bend that down or just add a piece of tubing to it to make it work. Bill, this is a cool little car if you find it, but it's got a single driver inside of it, so it actually already has a model inside or a driver inside. So he's got a helmet on, so you can easily paint that up. And just a fun little car. And it just snaps in here. And nothing outside of that. There's no engine details, some exhaust details. But my vision was to have this sticking out the back. And it's just going to be the Mishkin team, and this is going to be a just like a sonic weapon. It'll be able to be used for a lot of different things, but just fitting for the rules because it's not specific enough for one thing. And we've kind of talked about jeweler saws already, so you guys are familiar with them. Again, with the jeweler saw, you just go slow and careful. It's not a race. Alright, so I think I'm pretty far along. So now I'm going to make the other cut coming down.
Right.
And finish this off. It's just a matter of trying to find a good spot to hold it. Alright, so after a little bit of work, I got that piece out. So.
Look at you being all efficient.
And now we're looking at popping this in. It actually kind of fits perfectly because there's a little bit of a step right here.
Right.
And it fits right where it's like this car was made for this. So I'll probably just end up super gluing that down after I clean it up. But the idea is I need to do something with this tube to make it look like that's the power source for this car.
Right.
So it's either I try to bend it so it goes straight down, and if that works, great. If not, I may have to snip it off and just put another tube in. Find a tube or something and just put it in place. Just make it look like the power source. So this was what I was afraid of. I cut that off, tried to bend it. This is just pot metal, so it just broke. It didn't bend for me. Last week I started working on this car. This is going to be the crazy Mishkin. I'm going to put like the sci-fi weapon on here. Looking up in the rule book, it could be a magnetic pulse. It can be a laser and all kinds of different stuff. So I'm not saying exactly what this is going to be. I'm just going to use it as like a generic catch-all weapon. But the one thing I wanted to do was get this tube in place to make it look like it fit on the car. So this was my test tube or my test piece. Right. So I could figure out exactly where it was going to fit on the body. Because what I want to do is I'm going to mark that, drill a hole so the tube will go through, and I can put some plastic around the hole to make it look like it's supposed to be there and not just glued to the body. So this was all test fitting. I wanted to see where the tube was going to land, so I knew where to drill my hole. Then what I'm going to do is put some plastic down and make it look like the tube is bolted in place. So that needs to happen. And what I'm doing with the actual tube is I don't know if anyone ever really learned how to bend styrene tubing. Right. But what I did with this to get my bend for where I'm going to put it is I'm just running this under hot water. and the hot water is heating up the plastic enough for me to start reshaping it. And it's not a new trick. Everyone's, it's something I learned a long time ago. I don't know if people today still do that or not. Because sometimes when you use a lighter, you'll end up melting the plastic if you get a little too
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
So just run it or just run it under hot water from your sink. And if it's not forming, you could always boil a little pot of water and put it in the boiling water just to kind of reshape it the way you want it. But that's where this car's at. So I'm not going to do anything with it tonight because I need to take it out to the garage and do the drill. But I just wanted to kind of show that's the direction this car's taken. We got this glued on the back. It's crazy. It's out of scale, and I love it. And I think it looks perfect on there. And then this is just going to be kind of the tube holding the electrical wires or whatever is powering it. So I'll get that all done, and that will be finished. So what we ended up doing is I replaced the tube. So I drilled the hole in the bottom, ran the tube through, put it on. I added a little bracket here to kind of act like it's holding it down to the engine. Put a little bit of plastic card going around the base here just to make it look like it's a little bit more like it's supposed to be there. It's just not glued to the body. But that's where we're at with this. So I'm happy with how the body's turned out and where everything's at with it. So what we're going to do tonight is I want to show you how I add bolts to vehicles. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to add some epoxy sculpt around this styrene that I put down because there's some gaps and things that I need to fill on that. Obviously white's hard to show on the camera with all the light, but there's some gaps in the plastic I need to fill where it didn't quite reach all the way around. So that's what we're going to do with this. I haven't really come up with a name for this car. It's just going to be part of the sponsored Mishkin team that I want to create. But what I want to definitely do is I want to add a couple bolts right here on that strap. And one of the ways I do it is I've got this really small hexagon type styrene. And these are just like plastic rods, but they're not round. They are hexagon. And I don't even know if my camera would be able to show you that. There you go. Oh my gosh, it can. So there you go. So that's what this stuff looks like. It's this plastic rod. Let me zoom back out. So the way I put this on is I'm just going to cut off a small piece, glue it on here, let it dry, and then I'll just come back, cut it down to the thickness that I want, file it a little bit, and that's basically it. It's a cheap, effective way of putting bolts on your vehicles. Just to add that little bit of extra look to them that you might be after. And we'll just put a little dab of super glue. So basically I'm just going to glue that down. Let it hold for a little bit. And once I'm content with it being dry, I'll just come in with my cutters and just cut that off. And then I'll come in with my file and I'll just file that down to the right thickness. And there you go. I'll have a bolt on the end of my car. And I just picked up a bunch of these from the hobby store years ago because I actually have an Orc vehicle that I was doing a lot of customization to, and I was putting rivets all over the tank that I was working on. So that's why I have this. So I'll just clean up the edge and repeat the process. We're just putting on 2 bolts. If you ever want to kind of add bolts to a vehicle, this is one way to do it. There are other options out there. There are companies that actually make sheets of like resin that have like little bolt heads. You just cut the bolt heads off. But for what I'm doing, I think this is perfect. That's it. Then I'll just take a sanding stick and just kind of start filing these down until I get them to the thickness that I want. And that will be that. So those are the two bolts I just added there to hold that bracket in place. Camera's not getting it 100%, but I think you get the general idea. So what we also want to finish on this is when I was putting the plastic styrene around here to make this like coupling holding down the tube, it just didn't go on smooth. I don't know what happened, so it kind of didn't fit up and I had to make some cuts. So what I want to do is just take a little bit of epoxy sculpt and kind of fill that in just to make it look better. Then I'll just sand it down once it dries, and this car will be ready for some paint. And then I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with the wheels. So I don't know if I necessarily want to put on like off-road wheels. I'll probably just leave the race wheels on it, just for because it is a performance car. So we're just gonna do epoxy sculpt. Just gonna mix up a little dab of epoxy sculpt. This is gonna be one of those things. Once it dries, I'm just gonna have to sand it all smooth and shape it the way I want. It's going to be kind of challenging to get it super perfect on the car. So that's what we're looking at, is just kind of wrapping that around. And then what I'll do is I will just sand it flush. It's a little rough right now, a little bit, maybe in about 10-15 minutes I might come back at it once the epoxy sculpt had a little bit of time to harden up a little. And that's the car. So we'll get some paint on that and just call it good. Yeah, I'll probably just end up leaving these wheels on. I'll glue them down in place and just paint the 5-spoked star on those and pretty much call those wheels done. I think those wheels will work just fine on this car. So this is just going to be the crazy engine in the back. I did a yellow paint job and got it washed with some of the Gastoria yellow wash or whatever shade stuff this is from GW. So this just needs to get painted up. I need to paint the rims up, paint the interior up, and this guy's done. But I like the yellow with the splash of blue right there. I think that really makes it stand out. So that's kind of cool. So this is all painted up black. I'll let that dry. I kept it yellow underneath.
Right.
So it kind of still has a little bit of color to it, but then I'll get it all dry brush silver when it's fully dried. And then that car, then I got to do the interior, and that car's pretty much done. So this is the Mishkin car that I've been working on. And this is where I did the crazy big engine. So
right.
I just kind of painted it black and get, just to get a good base coat to it. Dry brush it silver. Only color I'm adding to it's that copper wire. I think you can see it right there.
Right.
That's it. So that's going to be kind of left alone. And then I'm doing the headlights.
Right.
So I got those painted with a silver base, and then I'll get the blue over them. After that, all I got to really do is paint up the little dude that sits inside the car, which will take, maybe a minute because there's not a lot of detail to it. He's wearing a big old helmet.
Right.
So I'll get that done, and then this car will be done.